Titilayo Oyinso, and it's a pleasure being your host. Now, we're talking books and the messages within. For those that know me, they know I have a major passion for the right book. And sometimes the messages within the book can just change your life. They can give you direction and maybe even make you a lot wealthier than you are right now. Now, the book we're going to be focusing on today is a really interesting one. I'm going to be introducing our author for the day in a second as well. But before we do that, I would like to just ask you, have you actually decided to take care of your skin recently? And the reason I ask this is because the Harmattan haze is in full force right now. A lot of people coming up with patchy skin all over the place. And now I've been working with a beauty company that has some amazing products that are organic, really easy to use. And of course, they're made in Europe. They're extremely good quality, and they're made for skin like ours. You understand what I'm talking about when I say that? So there's a QR code on your screen right now. If you would scan that QR code, it will redirect you to an amazing website called theuntamed.com. Now, The Untamed has not just beauty and skincare products like makeup, lipstick. They also have perfume for men and women, and of course, kitchen cleaning, kitchen fragrances, room fragrances, and so much more. There's loads you can learn on that website as well. Once again, try scan the QR code and see what amazing products there are available. All right, now enough with that. Let's go straight into today's show. Now, the On Air Book Club is happy to welcome Mr. Bright UK. Now, Bright UK is one of those people that you really want to meet. He's the CEO of ScribeTribe. It's an innovative media and publishing company connecting people and transforming society through creative and effective communication. He's known as Bright UK, and he is an esteemed author, speaker, and a life and leadership coach. He's inspiring profitable and sustainable change through ideological shifts. His book, Wealth Without Capital, is what we're focusing on today. But just in case you were wondering, he's also the executive director of Africhamps Network. It's a non-profit raising disruptive innovators and transformational leaders to stir the repositioning of Africa from third world to first world. Welcome, Bright UK. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Titi. Thank you. It's nice to be here too.
Okay, so first of all, Bright UK. We have to touch on Bright UK, the name. What does the UK stand for?
So it stands for Ukwenga. My full name is Bright Ukwenga. Quite interesting that a lot of people cannot pronounce the full name Ukwenga. So to prevent any hassle and to prevent the mispronunciation, I just keep it simple for them to say UK. So the same way you can shorten Ikechukwu to IK, you can shorten Ukwenga to UK. And then, of course, it helps my brand to be simple and memorable. And I think one more thing is that it's a very good conversation starter for me when I get to meet people.
Just as we've started today. Thank you so much for joining us. And now let's talk about this amazing book that you call Wealth Without Capital. And it just feels like a very odd sentence. Without capital. Hello. How does that even, where do you even begin talking about it? You want to show us what it looks like?
Yeah.
Okay, wealth without capital. Okay,
Wealth
fantastic.
without capital beyond money.
Capital
Wealth
beyond.
without capital beyond money. I know it sounds incredible, but it's what it is. The book idea came to me sometime in the year 2020. I had been reading about wealth. I'd been, doing my studies. I had also started a business which I was already running, a digital publishing and a digital media and publishing outfit. And then being a Christian, my personal devotions, studying about the life of Jacob and Joseph, and then stumbled on the idea that this guy's created wealth without capital. I mean, Jacob left his father's house with little or nothing. I mean, just a staff and a shepherd's bag, right? And 20 years down the line, when he reunited with his brother and his father, I mean, he was the wealthiest man in town, right? The question is, how was he able to create wealth without capital? And then the $1 million answer is that he was able to recognize and utilize capital beyond money. Now, his son, Joseph, was mentored by him for quite some time. Say at the age of 17, he was sold into slavery. So he left without capital again. This time around, he left as a slave. His father was even a servant to his boss, but this time around, he was a slave. I mean, that was a worse situation to be in. But when he reunited with his family again, I mean, he was the wealthiest man in town after Pharaoh. The big question again is, how was this guy able to create wealth without capital? And the answer is that he was able to recognize capital beyond money. So that brings me to the title of the book, or that was what brought about the title of the book, Wealth Without Capital, Capital. The sixth sense guide to creating wealth out of nothing. And for me, I have come to realize that it's very much possible for anybody and everybody to create wealth for themselves out of nothing.
Now, this book is quite chunky. It's quite a heavy piece. There's a lot that you've put into it. In fact, if I can confirm from the website, you have 18 chapters here. So let's talk about how long
pages.
Say again?
18 chapters, 308 pages.
So you need to talk to us about how long it took you to put this together and what sort of research had to go into it.
So you see, every book in itself is a message, and the message comes to life with the life of the author. So if you talk about how long it takes to put a book together, or how long it takes to put a message together, I would say it's a lifetime, right? But in terms of putting the message into words, yeah, it took me just quite some time, say a space of 3 to 5 months, right, to pen down the words of the book, do the editing, and even get it out. 3 to 5 months, I was done. Anyway, part of what aided
the way
that
you're
process.
saying that 3 to 5 months is you're just making it seem like you just sneezed and the book came out. 3 to 5 months.
Well, interestingly, I mean, I could show you some of the. I mean, I have here one of my what I would call a parchment, you know, but it's more like my notebook, right?
Okay.
It's a book of ideas. This was the book where I started writing this book from. All the ideas, everything crystallized from here in the year 2020. Basically, you see, what you make happen for others, they say happens for you, right? I've been writing for authors before then. Don't forget, I run a company. It's a media and publishing company that offers publishing. It's a full service publishing company for authors, which means that for subject matter experts and thought leaders who want to document their stories, who want to inspire others with their own ideas and their knowledge and their expertise, we help them to put that into book, right? So we offer ghostwriting services,
Okay, fantastic. Okay.
has full publishing
does
services
make more sense now.
to design to printing and everything. So I was already used to the process. I was not like a newbie.
Okay. All right then. All right then. Thank you so much. But now let's talk a little bit about the book itself.
All right.
The title. First of all, this is the type of title that you know what you are into publishing already. You put up a title that when someone is walking by on the shelf and they see the title, it makes them stop.
Yeah, it has to be captivating. It has to, tinker with their thinking, their thinking process. Yeah, that's it.
But then again, do you think everyone would get answers to their questions when they finally go through your book? Who did you write this book for?
Oh, definitely yes. Everyone will get answers to your questions, because the first question people ask when they come across the book is this possible? And this book answers it from the very beginning. Yes. In fact, when you open it, before you get into any of the pages, the first thing you see there is a quote by St. Francis of Assisi. I don't know if you can see this quite well. It says, "Start by doing what is necessary, then what is possible." All right, and before you know it, you're doing the impossible. So
start by doing what is possible.
Start by doing what is necessary,
What is
then
necessary?
what is possible. And he says, suddenly you are doing the impossible, right? So we often think wealth without capital is impossible. So would they find the answers to their question? The answer is yes. And who did I write this book for? I write it for typically the African. And of course, it's a call to other people in the world, but I'm taking the African as a very typical, a prototype of the audience. I'm looking at people who were not born with a silver spoon, right? Because this book was written to democratize wealth, right? To show people that, look, you are not disadvantaged as you think, you are only disadvantaged by your thinking, right? So the way you think is really what makes the difference. You might not be born with a silver spoon, but it doesn't mean that you cannot create wealth. The fact that you did not inherit it does not mean that you don't have a chance on it. You can create it from scratch for yourself and by yourself, right? So that's why I wrote this book, and it's for those who really need that inspiration to say, see, I can do this, and if I believe that I can, how do I go about it? And these are just very simple steps, all right, that has worked for many years, for centuries and millennia, right? And condensed in simple everyday language with contemporary stories, that people can relate to. Yeah, that's basically it.
We're definitely going to jump in and read from the book in just a bit. But I have to say, many speakers, especially in Africa, in Nigeria, people have begun to sort of look past them in terms of their mentorship capabilities. There's this whole aspire to perspire thing that became a slang, I think, 2 years ago, based on the fact that many of the motivational speakers talked a good game, but never really had people following behind them that could showcase the results. Now, you put this together in 2020. Can you tell us that you have people who have gone through it and have actually been positively impacted by it?
Yes, there are a very good number of people. And I might just mention just one or two, but and then let me say this before I go on to say that, right? The idea is there were charlatans that came into the whole motivational speaking thingy, and that's part of why I personally don't even style myself as a motivational speaker. My words can motivate people, but I do not intend, that's not my intention, to be a motivational speaker to them at any time. I intend to shift the way they think. That's basically what I do. And I don't even tell them how to think. I give them tools for thinking, right? I don't tell them this is what you do, this is what you have to know. No. They just have to have the tools for thinking that enables them to think in a way that delivers the kind of results that they want to have, right? And then, who are the people that I have worked with that have been challenged and, of course, helped by this book? You might know, what's her name now? Abisola Olawale, Ordinary World. Might have seen her on IG at some time. This is someone who is a testimony to some of the things that we've shared over time in this book. And there are so many others, people who have decided to, start businesses out of this, having read and been impacted by the book. So there are success stories, very, very great ones.
I'm very glad to hear that. And thank you for taking us through that issue of the charlatans, because it was a very delicate issue, I think, 2 years ago. But there are so many success stories, and I wanted to just highlight the fact that, yes, there are real people who have been able to make real impact. Now, let's jump into the book. Let's start with chapter 1 here, Power of a Paradigm. What you
Yeah.
see is what you get. So what can you tell us about this chapter? Why was it important for this chapter to come first?
Yeah, it's important for this chapter to come first because it is the basis, the foundation of everything I was going to be talking about. Personally, I am a mind engineering expert. What I do is to shift the way people think, because I believe that the only way to achieve permanent changes in the life of people is to change the way they think, right? And how they think eventually determines how they respond. How they respond determines the kind of results that they get at the end of the day. So how you think, we think basically with paradigms. with what we'll call intellectual constructs, right? There are parameters for our judgment, for our discernment, how we evaluate issues. That's basically it. And I started with an illustration of you putting on a glass, I mean a spec, an eyeglass. If you wear an eyeglass, the color of that eyeglass will determine the color of the object you're going to be seeing. Am I right? If you put on a shade, a dark shade, everything would appear dark to you. If you put on a yellow shade, everything will appear yellow. If you put on a blue one, everything appears blue. So in other words, the paradigm determines every other thing. How we don't really see things the way they are. We see things based on our previous experiences. You see that now? You know, that's really what shapes how we see life. And so whether you're seeing something as an opportunity or an opposition, you are right. That's the interesting thing. Whether you are seeing it as an opposition or an opportunity, you are right. But the point is, the way you see it will determine how you approach it and the results that you ultimately get in the long run. So people need to understand that if they've not been rich or they've not been wealthy before now, it's because of how they've been viewing life and how they've been approaching it. It's not anybody's fault. It's your personal responsibility. You have to do something about the way you think, the way you see. All right. I like to touch Bible insight from the Bible when I talk like this. You know, there's a scripture where Jesus tells Nicodemus, it says, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. John 3 verse 3, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. Now, that has a very deep spiritual significance, but I like to interpret it in some business or practical reality of business, right? And what I see here as a business leader is that the level of growth that one has attained, that's what it means to be born again, right? To be born again, you become someone else. You grow, you outgrow a particular level and grow into another level, will determine the quality of your perspective and your perception. You would agree with me that the way you think now about certain situations is not the same way you used to think about the same situation 10 years ago. Your approach has changed over time. Your approach has changed, and that has made a difference. The way you approach issues now determines the quality of the results that you get. So that's the essence of that particular chapter on the power of a paradigm. Paradigm determines every other thing. That's it.
Now that was chapter 1 there, and you know, entitlement is expensive is how you titled chapter 2.
Yeah.
And entitlement, that word entitlement, it's become a mentality amongst the people these days. So how do we begin to understand the true cost of this entitlement?
Okay, so if you permit me, I would just give give a summary of what I call the poverty and the prosperity cycle, which is what chapter 2, 3, and 4 are about, discussing these instruments in detail. You know, beginning from the first chapter or from the first part of the book, I try to explain to people that poverty is not just about lack of money or lack of resources. It's basically about a system of thinking that results in lack of resources, results in scarcity and disempowerment, right? The same way prosperity is not about abundance of resources. It's about a system of thinking, the way you perceive things and respond to it, that now brings about abundance and, you know, enormity of power, enormity of choices and things like that. Now, it was not only Jacob and Joseph that left their father's house, you know, with nothing and returned. You see, there are some other cases of that, whether in the Bible and outside of the Bible. But there is also one young man who left his father's house. He's the prodigal son. He left with everything, right? And by the time he returned, years later, he was poorer than a, you know, church rat, if you would say. And guess what? This guy left with everything and reduced everything to nothing. So why is it that some are able to create something out of nothing, like Jacob and Joseph, while some others reduce everything to nothing? And of course, you might have, you know, seen certain people in your life at some point in time that they always reduce everything you give to them to nothing. What's the difference? That's where the poverty and the prosperity cycle comes in. The poverty cycle is this: the prodigal son, first and foremost, got what he got not by his own effort, but by what? Entitlement. That's where entitlement starts, right? It was his father's sweat. He says, give me what is my inheritance. This is not what I have worked for, but because I am associated with this heritage, I have a part in it. And so I demand for what is my right. See that? That's number one. Number two is when people are entitled, they usually do not discern the value of what they are given. And so what happens is that they go ahead to consume it. So you see the second chapter is about consumption, right? They consume it thoughtlessly. And sometimes consumption is not even just about consumption and what I would call recklessness. It's not just about you spending it all of a sudden. Sometimes it's that you are underutilizing what is given to you. Do you understand what I'm saying? You are underutilizing it. All right. This thing can do much more, but you are only doing so little with it. Look at the parable of the guy who was given just one talent. In the parable of the talents, that guy underutilized what was given to him. So he was a consumer. And don't forget, it all began with entitlement also. He thought he deserved more. And so in his thinking that he deserved more, he could not even utilize one properly. This is really what makes people poor. Not that they were not given as much as they needed or as much as they should have been given, but you cannot even utilize one well, right? So that's basically it. When people are, I mean, if you sponsor somebody for a program, for example, the person might not pay attention in class. If you give a person a book to read for free, they might not read it. You see that now? That's
they might not value it. It's about value, the value that's placed on it.
It's about value, your ability to discern value, right? Then number three is when he consumed all that he was entitled to. I think the prodigal son now, he settled for the inglorious position of a slave just to survive. He had to live to survive from hand to mouth daily. His belly became his driver instead of his brain. And when you think with your stomach, you're going to think small. But when you think with your brain, you're going to think big.
Okay, now, so but it does feel like this particular cycle of the prodigal son is the typical cycle of the average young person today.
Yeah.
They are given access to so much information, the internet. That mostly their parents did the most to finish their school to a certain extent. So what can they do to prevent this cycle from continuing?
Okay, so to prevent that cycle, they have to understand how that cycle comes about in order to begin to deal with it, right? You cannot deal with what you don't even understand the origin of. So let me just take a brief dive into the origin of the poverty cycle. Now, it all begins from a place of graciousness on the part of parents. Entitlement is something that is legit when you are young as a baby, when you are born. Entitlement, the instruments of entitlement, consumption, and survival are afforded that child or every baby so that they can grow what you call self-esteem, which gives them a sense of deserving and a sense of resilience in pursuing whatever they need to pursue. So when a child is young, when he's born, he doesn't have to articulate his words well before you listen to him, right? He doesn't even have to, when he cries, you listen. When he cries, you pay attention, not because he is saying something sensible, but you're just trying to show him that his feelings, his ideas, his opinions, and all of that, his desires matter. That sense of you matter is what you are trying to convey in your responses to the child. So over time, the child internalizes that sense of I matter and begins to have a sense of esteem. People who are denied that sense of entitlement, who are denied the ability to consume freely without thinking of where without thinking about the source. Such kind of people, by the time they grow up, their self-esteem is affected, whether they grow up in a rich or a poor home. And guess what? When a person has a poor sense of esteem, he is worse than a very poor man. I'm telling you this for free. People say education is the greatest legacy parents can give to their children. I disagree. I believe that self-esteem is the greatest gifts that parents can give to their children. One, because this is something they cannot give to themselves. A child cannot give self-esteem to himself. It takes a caregiver to give that gift to the child. Education, a child with a very good sense of esteem can grow up and educate themselves, right? I mean, Cosmos Magical, if you follow the story, one story I like to, to share again and again and again. He grew up in a poor home, educated himself, and we know how successful he has turned out to be today. In fact, people who were educated before him listen to him, and they know that they draw a whole lot of inspiration and wisdom from him. So understanding the origins of entitlement, how do people begin to deal with it? Now, the point is, as a parent, when you're raising your child, there is a point where you begin to relax some of those instruments. Paul said, when I was a child, I thought as a child, I, spoke as a child, and I did everything as a child. I said, when I became a man, I put away childish things. And so the way I describe it is this: when you are molding a block, you use a mold, you put in the mixture of cement and water and sand. When that block is molded, you take out, the mold itself, the metallic mold, so that mixture can dry. And when it dries, you can see what you have there. If you do not take out the metal as early as possible, what happens is that it becomes a limitation rather than an enabler. And that's really what happens with parents when they are raising their children. They do not know when to wean their children off entitlement and consumption and the survival-driven mentality, right? And so when people grow up, they just transfer responsibility of their lives to either their spouse, their friends, their pastors, their bosses, and things like that. You can see that sense of dependence is there, all right? So how do they begin to deal with this thing? Number one, you have to recognize the origin. Number two, you need to learn to take responsibility. Learn to embrace responsibility in all of its forms. It's one of the reasons that when you start out, in life after school, right, you have to go work for someone. Go and work under a boss. Telling yourself, I will never work for someone, I have never worked for someone, it's not a testimony, right? When you work for someone, one of the things that is doing to you is it is breaking your sense of entitlement, right? You want to do certain things, you are not allowed. There is a sense of limitation. Yes, you are restrained. You begin to learn that if you do not go to, unlike when you are in school, where even when you don't go to class, you still have the right to ask for allowance. When you work under someone, you cannot eat your cake and have it. If you do not show up, you don't get paid. That is breaking your sense of entitlement. It's crushing you, right? So when Jacob left his father's house, he went to work with Laban. And guess what Laban was doing? Laban was breaking every sense of entitlement. When Joseph left his father's house, guess where he went to? He was working under Potiphar. And you see, he went from, reveling in his coat of many colors to being a slave. You see that? Now, that was sense of entitlement being dismantled. So it is putting yourself under authority structures that are able to regulate your life and guide you in a particular direction beyond your own personal desires. And that's why Solomon wrote a very interesting part of the scripture where he says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. He did not say whatever your heart likes to do. He says what your hands find to do, which means at that point when you're just stepping out of school and you have so many big dreams, it's not about what you wish to do. You will find someone who will tell you, do this against your will. Doing things against your will is not there to crush you. It's only there to tell you that, see, life is more than what you want. Life is about you, but it's not all about you. And in the real sense, if you're going to, succeed with your talent, for example, you're not going to be doing what you like to do. You're going to be doing what brings value to people. And what brings value to people does not necessarily have to meet your own interests, right? You will have to work your interest, your talents, your skills, and everything around, the needs of others. In whichever way it does, it will have to take you out of your comfort zone. You see that now? Going out of your comfort zone is breaking from entitlement. And if you're not careful, if you decide to say, I'll stay in my comfort zone, I will still embrace my sense of entitlement, guess what? You are going to be very poor in the long run. Very, very poor. So let me just stop at that.
I know that you could go on and on and on about these chapters, and I can hear how passionate you are about them. But because of time, there's still quite a lot to go through. Let's go quickly to chapter 3. Consumption is corruptive. Now you say here, to multiply your resources, you need to do away with reducers. Don't be idolaters, as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. Now you need to break down even the introduction of chapter 3. You need to break that down for us.
Well, so because there's a whole lot to say, I'll just keep it simple. Consumption is corruptive. I mean, it can deal with you if you don't deal with your appetite will deal with you. It's rational.
What are reducers? What are they?
Reducers are unhealthy appetites. Reducers are friends that do not add value. They only take from you, right? Reducers are employees that are not adding value. In fact, whatever does not add value but only takes value from you is a reducer. Employees that are not profitable, the master in the parable of the talents had to deal with the reducer in his team. You see that now. So anything that does not add value to you, it's a liability.
But there are some people that say that no matter what, when you're climbing to the top, don't forget those that you left behind. Don't forget where you came from, etc., etc. Yeah. There are quite a few sayings like that.
You see, if you're going to create wealth, you would have to do a whole lot on your thinking about the way you think and the way you see things, right? Even your definitions will have to change. Your definitions of what family means, we have to change. Sometimes our definitions are our limitations. Our definitions of family are our limitation. You see, especially when it comes to family, you don't have to define family just in terms of vital relationships. You have to also define them in terms of functional relationships. If you're not careful, the same friends, the same family, the same people you are talking about will reduce you. If the basic thing here I just want to say is people need to learn to draw boundaries. If you do not draw boundaries early, you are going to enable irresponsibility in the people around you, and guess what? They're going to suck you down. There is this scripture, where Jesus says, do not cast your pearl before swines. What does that mean? It means don't give to people something that they don't value. If you put yourself down to people who do not, if you give the most precious things in your life to people who do not value you, you give them your time, you give them your energy, at the end of the day, it's going to be a wasted investment. And that's why the reason we call the 5 virgins wise amongst the 10, the reason we call them wise is that they knew what to give and what not to give. I hope you got that. They knew what to give, what not to give. I love you. However, there are certain things that I cannot put up with. Learn to draw boundaries, right? If those people, some people will say, help me today. You don't know what will happen tomorrow. My brother, if you are a reducer and I refuse to help you today, I am helping you actually. If I refuse to give you money, I am helping you. I'm helping you to discover your responsible self. That's what I'm helping you to discover. And guess what? When people discover their responsible self, they do not resent those who refuse to help them when they were irresponsible. In fact, they begin to thank them. And that's why when people begin to enter into wealth, they begin to think different and begin to appreciate some of the people in the past that they usually resented. I hope you're getting what I'm saying. So it's like that. Because if we do not bring people to that point of repentance, in quotes, right, they will not be able to create wealth for themselves at the end of it. So you need to help them become born again, not just in their spirit, but also in their thinking, and they will thank you for it.
I love this title for chapter 9. And here you talk about demystifying money. To whom much is given, much is expected. What is the mystery around money that you want to demystify?
Well, people need to understand what money is, because if they understand what money is, they would not overestimate what they need and underestimate what they have. Always when people talk about capital, capital, they are talking about financial capital. But that's just one form of capital. There are other forms of capital, right? And oftentimes what they need is not money. What they need is capital. And capital, at the basic sense of what capital is resource. And what does it mean when we say something is a resource? It means it is something that can enable you to achieve your objective. That's not necessarily money. Money is just a liquid form of resource, right? Because it is easy to translate from one form to another. But if people understand what money is a store of value. Money is a means of exchange of value. Another thing I talked about, in fact, one of the most important things I talked about when I was explaining about what money really is about, I said money is a measure of economic interest, and the value, the monetary value of a commodity does not necessarily do justice to the value of that commodity. So if you have a car valued at 3 million, for example, if you have a car valued at 3 million, the fact that you have put 3 million around that car does not necessarily mean that that is the value of the car. Take that car to another place just by changing the geography. Already you have altered the price of that car. Do you get it? So if people need to understand that value is created, value is not constant. And when it comes to money as a store of value, the money you are, look at today where we're talking about the naira and the exchange and things like that. It helps you to see that money is not real. It's not real. Yeah, money is not, it's not as real as people think. So if only they can think, they will go, because the essence of that chapter was also to help people to go from resource thinking to resourcefulness thinking.
So in other words, you have other things you can provide that are valuable. So right now, I think we've had this conversation before. Social capital.
Yeah.
So for instance, I have a conversation with you on air today, and you talk to me about an opportunity, and an opportunity that I would find valuable, maybe to educate myself, and I have the means to maybe help whoever is providing that service with advertising. In other words, the value of my conversation with you would be valued at the cost of that course or that training.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Oh yes.
So that's
sometimes
social
people
capital,
just
because we
yes,
know it.
beyond the money they think about, beyond money, they need to think about what they have. Oftentimes, it's not your limitation in terms of creating wealth is not about what you don't have, which is how people think. They think it's about what they don't have. No, it's about what they have that they are underutilizing, because they are thinking in terms of money. So if you need a car, if you needed a car to start a business, you're thinking, okay, based on the car I need, my budget is going to be 5 million. But guess what? You don't need 5 million. What you need is a car. And your dad might have a car. Your friend might have a car. If you go around thinking, bro, I need 5 million, can you help me with 5 million? He doesn't have 5 million to give to you. Peter said, silver and gold, I have none, but such as I have, what if I can give you what you want without having to convert it first to money? So people think in terms of money and forget what they really need. So they they underestimate what they need. They underestimate what they have and overestimate what they need. And then they begin to think, oh, this is impossible. It's impossible. Guess what? Those who start from scratch, those who bootstrap, usually leverage capital that is beyond money. They look within their network. All right? Who can give me this to at least start? All right? Who can recommend me to a certain person? Do you realize that do you realize the value of a recommendation? Do you know that just one recommendation can bring you an opportunity? And this is why people don't value relationships. Because if you don't understand the value of a relationship, you're going to be thinking it's just money you can get from an individual. Whereas you can get much more than money. What you need or what you need is an opportunity to even make much more than the money that you are looking for. You see that now? So I took my time to demystify what money is in terms of the value. I mean, money as a store of value, as a means of exchange, the economic interest, the monetary value and things like that. And then I touched on some mental adjustments that people need to make, especially those who are Christian folks who have had a whole lot of religious limitations around making money and wealth and things like that. So that's what that chapter basically is about.
I'm scrolling through chapter 11 here, and chapter 11 is intellectual capital. I think I talked a bit about the exchange of value earlier, just when we were talking just now. And intellectual capital is making the most of your mind. That's what you say here. You say to say that heritage gives us a head start, to emphasize that we all start by standing on the labors of others. We grow up drinking from the well that others have built. In other words, we begin from the begging or dependent stage. And as long as we use it right, our heritage is a blessing to us. But as we mature, we have to go from merely drinking from the well that others have dug to digging wells from which we can nourish ourselves and others coming from behind. I think that's very profound as an opening chapter, and really kudos to you for that. It speaks volumes, but I know you're going to dig a little bit deeper, no pun intended, on that chapter. Intellectual capital. Talk to us about it.
Okay, so the first kind of capital that we have individually is the heritage capital. Heritage capital talks about the things that your parents afforded you, your caregivers afforded you in terms of environments. I mean, if you were born in a village, if your parents gave birth to you in a village and they were living in a village and you started your life from the village, you would agree with me that where you are now in your career is not where you will be. You would have to be doing some more work before you can get to this level. Do you understand what I'm saying? So even we who are in the third world countries, in the real sense, there are opportunities that first world country citizens have that we do not have. And so we have to work our way there. You get what I'm saying? So heritage capital in terms of environment, in terms of education, in terms of exposure, these are things that your family, your association, afforded you when you started. But beyond that, as you get into adulthood, you have to start creating things for your own self. It's not about saying my daddy lived in Ikoyi. Your dad might live in Ikoyi, but you don't live in Ikoyi. You might have to start your own life from Ikorodu. Even though they are both Iko, but they are two different areas in Lagos State. When you start out your life, the first capital you now need to create on your own, based on what they've afforded you, is your intellectual capital. You need to pay attention to knowledge, pay attention to skills. These are two things. What your hand finds to do is what will deliver it's what will open the first set of doors to you. And if you don't have it, you have to go look for it. That's why you were educated in the first place. And so you have to, and it's not just about your education. You go work for someone, for example, and you're doing an apprenticeship in quotes, because your first job, anybody who gets out of school and gets their first job, your first job is basically an apprenticeship. Take it as that. Don't even look for the money, just look for the experience, the knowledge, the skills that you can get out of the job. And when you're doing that, when you now learn to do stuff, you can use that skill to open doors for yourself when you have learned, to create value over time. And basically what that means is that when you offer your skill, I'm not talking about your talents, I'm talking about skill. Skill is refined talent. When you offer it to people, two things happen. Number one, they are paying you for it, but much more importantly, you are establishing relationships. And those relationships are what brings about credibility. That takes you to the next level, which is what? Relational capital. Right? And then relational capital will open much more doors for you. But that's basically what the intellectual capital is about. It's about developing, your knowledge, developing skills, gaining experiences. These are the things that unlock much more opportunities and possibilities in the future for you. When you meet people, they are going to ask you, I mean, what's your track record? When David wanted to, fight Goliath, he had to tell King Saul, he says, see, I have done this, I have done this. Maybe I should just take a little more time on it. Last time I was on air at TVC, I talked about, going from hard work to soft work. And I talked about what I call the digging phase. In the digging phase, I say when you start out digging. Now, when you start digging the ground, before now you've been getting water from the tap. Let's take, for example, you've been getting water from the tap, but you want to get your own water now. You have to dig the ground. When you start digging, there are 3 things you are going to notice. Number 1, you are putting in a whole lot of effort, but you are getting little or no results. Because as you are striking the ground, you want to see water, but what you are seeing is sand. Number 2, you notice that it's quite, you have limited freedom. You have to stay on one spot to dig. You cannot be jumping from one place to another, right? Unlike when you were much younger, you just go anywhere you want. Your freedom was, unlimited. But now freedom is going to be limited. Number 3 is that you're going to notice that it's quite a lonely journey. So all the people who have been clapping for you before then, suddenly they just desert you. You are no longer hearing the cheers, and you're going to come to a point in your career, at the beginning where you are quite kind of depressed because you're not getting the kind of results that you really wanted. That's what the digging phase is about, and that is where you really cultivate intellectual capital. There's a whole lot to say about this, but this is what young people of today need to understand. Oftentimes they think that success comes overnight, but success comes over thousands of nights. All right, when you are burning the candle, where you are having to learn and you are doing your best, but your best is not enough. And that best is when somebody tells you your best is not enough, it stretches you. And that's how you come about the experience that you need. For Jacob, what that meant is that he learns to understand the things that makes the big things work. And that's why when he came out from serving his uncle, in a space of 6 years, he became wealthier than his own boss when he started his own business. You see, that is really what people are getting in their digging phase. You are getting what will catapult you, to the peak that you really want to get.
So in other words, you can't skip it. You can't skip this.
It's impossible to skip it. The best you can do for yourself is to start early. So some people start their digging as early as 10 years old. Imagine somebody who starts learning how to play the instrument at 10 years old, a musical instrument. And somewhere around from 13 years, this person is already going around with musicians, and playing, without being seen. Those are days of obscurity, and it's understandable. Now, when this person comes at the age of 18 and he's now a superstar, somebody says he just started. No, he started at 10. And that's how it happens. Some people start at 7, under the guidance of very wise parents, which is what people need to do. Nowadays they have to learn to parent their children into wealth.
So, but for those that maybe they don't have parents, they don't have the type of mentors they need for the type of vision that they realize that they have. For instance, reputational capital, which is your chapter 13. I do believe that sort of touches on that. Let me see what we have here. It says here, when we read about Solomon's proverb that diligent men shall stand before kings, we often interpret it in favor of the diligent men with little or no consideration for the kings. Why do diligent men aspire to stand before kings, and what is the implication of standing before kings? Which position would you rather aspire to? Is it the diligent man or is it the king? Great way to open the chapter.
Yeah. So every industry, every territory has the kings. You have the A-list guys. You have the icons of that industry. And when Solomon says, seest thou a diligent man, he will stand before kings. See, the goal is not for you to be a diligent man. That's a short-term goal or a mid-term goal. The long run is for you to be a king yourself. That's the goal. So you see somewhere else, Solomon says, the hand of the diligent shall bear rule. So you can see that the goal is not to, be a diligent man. But the point here is this. Kings, for you to become a king, you have to be diligent, be the best at what you do so that you can serve kings and then become one yourself, right? So you want to be the best in your industry. You want to be recognized as amongst the top. You definitely have to be good at what you do. That's, in fact, that's a basic requirement, even though that's not all that is required, but it's just a basic requirement. Excellence is non-negotiable. Excellence is the delicacy of kings, and for those who will stand before kings, they must profess excellence. Joseph was excellent. Jacob was excellent. David was excellent. These guys could do what none of their peers could do. It's just a very cheap way, if you permit that expression. It's a cheap way, cheap path. You see, there's no shortcut to it. It's the fastest way to become a king in your domain. You have to be good at what you do.
So being good at what you do you
yes.
think it's so there is this analogy that says talent is not enough. You have to have
So
more than
being good at what you do is not about talent. Being good at what you do is even about refining your talent. All right, so that you can become the best. Now, what it takes to be a king, like I was talking about here, is to have a reputation for excellence. Like when they call the best people in this field, your name should be ringing a bell. That's what a king. A king is someone who is known. You are literally the icon of the industry, and sometimes exactly, you recognize, you're the one that they remember. You are the go-to person in that. You are the thought leader. You are the expert, the subject matter expert, the go-to professional. That's really what it is. In the comedy industry, there are kings in that industry. You talk about people like Alibaba, all right, who in fact has been so influential. And not only has he created wealth for himself, he has gone beyond thinking about income to thinking about influence. And so he's bringing others on board. You see that now? A king is somebody who has gone beyond income to thinking about influence, such that his own reputation opens doors not only for him but for others.
So at this point, even if, for instance, you've not gotten to a place where you can open doors for other people, should you begin doing that? Even though maybe the capital you have is a good name, is a reputation, but maybe you've not really truly made that wealth yet. Do you still advise people help other people make that connection?
Yes. So the point is, you don't have to be at the top of your game. I mean, at the top of your career or the top of your industry before you start building reputational capital. These capitals grow with you. Your intellectual capital grows with you from the very beginning of your career. Your relational capital grows with you from the very beginning of your career. Your reputational capital also grows with you. So the point is, you should understand that by the time you get there, it will be too late to start building this. If you get what I mean. So you have to start building it as early as possible. While you are building your intellectual capital, right, you're also building relationships, because it's your relationships that will take you to the next phase. I give you a typical example, right? For Jacob and for Joseph had done a whole lot. It was relationships that helped him to even unlock, his kingly status as a prime minister. He offered a service for free to someone and said to him, remember me, remember me. And the guy got there and remembered him. And I can give you a whole lot of examples of people, whether in the Bible and outside of the Bible, including myself, that has gotten to important places because of relationships. And I'm so sure in your own career, you will have noticed that without relationships, you go nowhere. You understand what I'm saying? You won't be where you are today if there are no relationships that have, at least people who have taken a chance on you. Right? So it's basically what it is. And young people need to understand that this is not it's not a talent game. It's a relationship game. Everything multiplies on the basis of relationships. And if you're going to have good relationships around you, your reputation matters a whole lot.
At this point, I would like to encourage people out there who are watching to visit the website. It's called wealthwithoutcapital.com. That's wealthwithoutcapital.com. It'll give you a lot of insight on maybe some snippets of what is in the book, and also the opportunity for you to make a purchase of this amazing piece. We couldn't get through all of it, and we've been at this for almost an hour now, but that's the cover. The author for today on the On Air Book Club, Bright UK. He's also the author of another book called Sixth Sense Leadership, which is also another insightful piece. We need to talk about that a little later on. Another time, right?
I'm happy to share.
The name of the book, one more time: Wealth Without Capital, Capital Beyond Money. And I'm going to be doing what I can to go through each of these chapters myself now, because I know a lot more about what's within those pages. But Bright UK, I have to say thank you to you for joining us on today's show.
Thank you too for inviting me.
Once again, that is Wealth Without Capital.com. You need to check out this book. Now, he's also available on LinkedIn. You are Bright UK on LinkedIn, I believe, yes?
Bright Ukwenga, full name on LinkedIn, Bright Ukwenga, Ukwenga.
Okay, could you spell it one more time, please?
Ukwenga.
Okay, all right, fantastic. I have it already. FIMCCMC. All right, I got you. I'm following you now, and I'm going to be tagging you in the post of this particular conversation. There is a lot that we can learn from within the pages of books, and we are doing what we can to help improve on the reading culture here in Nigeria and, of course, beyond. Thank you so much, Bright, for joining us today.
Thank you to all the very best.
All right. Now, if you're just tuning in, this is the On Air Book Club, and today we had an interesting conversation with Mr. Bright UK. Now, he's an esteemed author, speaker, and life and leadership coach, inspiring profitable and sustainable change through ideological shifts. He has done so much to help build ScribeTribe. He's an innovative media and publishing company connecting people through transforming society with effective communication. Now, he's also the managing partner of SixthSense Leadership Consulting. It was great having him here today, and hopefully we've given you a book to look out for. It's available on Amazon, and I think you should pick up a copy. If you would like to be on the On Air Book Club, it's not that hard at all. All you need to do is send us an email. That's dynamitepodcastnetwork@gmail.com. That's dynamitepodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You need to send in a copy of the book, of course, and of course your written profile, so we can review and vet the copies that you're sending in. And before I go, I'd like to encourage you one more time to take better care of your skin. Now, there is a beauty company I've been working with, and it's called The Untamed. Now, The Untamed Beauty have put together these amazing organic products, and they have been put together in Europe. Now, it's not just for people abroad, it's also for people of color like us. Now, the Hamatan is dealing with everyone right now. It's dealing with our skin in a very horrible way, and we need to take care of our skin. We need to protect it, and these are some amazing products that you might want to check out. Why not scan the barcode on your screen right now? It'll redirect you to the website where you'll be able to see how amazing these products truly are. I can't talk enough about them, but just prepare your skin for this colder season with the skincare kits that they have. They've been formulated to soothe your skin for long-lasting comfort. There are also some premium cleaning and washing products that are available for you as well. You can check out the website. It's theuntamed.com. Now, 5 Oceans are partnering with The Untamed as well to give us some fabric fresheners and so much more. There are fragrances, skincare kits, and makeup as well. And I suggest you get there right now. Just scan the barcode and see if you can take a quick look at what's happening with your skin. All right, that's it right there on your screen. Scan the barcode right now for a redirect. Once again, my name is Titilayo Onyisol. Thank you so much for joining us. Until I come your way next time, have a great one.